Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanavad Prabhu.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janvallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Astottar Satashri Srimati His Divine Grace of Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namo Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Astottar Satashri Srimati His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय. नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. श्री राधा कृष्ण गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय. श्री व्रजभूमि मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय. श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की जय. श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय. श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय. गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि हरि. श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की जय. So Mataji, you can put Bhagavad Gita on screen, so we can just read the verse.
Yes, Prabhu.
So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. The title is Transcendental Knowledge, and I'm asked to cover the two verses, Bhagavad Gita 4.19 and 4.20. Yasya sarve samārambhāḥ kāma-saṅkalpa-varjitāḥ jñānāgni-dagdha-karmāṇaṁ tam āhuḥ paṇḍitaṁ budhāḥ. Yasya sarve samārambhāḥ kāma-saṅkalpa-varjitāḥ jñānāgni-dagdha-karmāṇaṁ tam āhuḥ paṇḍitaṁ budhāḥ. Yasya sarve samārambhāḥ kāma-saṅkalpa-varjitāḥ jñānāgni-dagdha-karmāṇaṁ tam āhuḥ paṇḍitaṁ budhāḥ. Transliteration. Yasya, one whose survey, all sorts of samārambhāḥ, attempts, kāma, based on desire for sense gratification. Sankalpa, determination. Varjitāḥ are devoid of. Jnana, of perfect knowledge. Agni, by the fire. Dagdha, burned. Karmaṇaṁ, whose work. Tam, him. Āhuḥ, declare. Paṇḍitaṁ, learned. Buddha, those who know. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge. Purport. Only a person in full knowledge can understand the activities of a person in Krishna consciousness. Because the person in Krishna consciousness is devoid of all kinds of sense gratificatory propensities, it is to be understood that he has burned up the reactions of his work by perfect knowledge of his constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is actually learned who has attained to such perfection of knowledge. Development of this knowledge of eternal servitorship to the Lord is compared to fire, and such a fire, once kindled, can burn up all kinds of reactions to work. Next verse, please. Thank you. Bhagavad Gita 4.20. Tyaktvā karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ nitya-tṛpto nirāśrayaḥ karmaṇy abhipravṛtto naiva kiñcit karoti sa. Tyaktvā karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ nitya-tṛpto nirāśrayaḥ karmaṇy abhipravṛtto naiva kiñcit karoti sa. Tyaktvā karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ nitya-tṛpto nirāśrayaḥ karmaṇy abhipravṛtto naiva kiñcit karoti sa. Tyaktvā, having given up. Karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ, attachment for fruitive results. It is karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ, attachment for the fruitive results. Nitya, always. Tṛptaḥ, being satisfied. Nirāśrayaḥ, without any shelter. Karmaṇy, in activity. Abhipravṛtto, being fully engaged. Api, in spite of. Na, does not. Eva, certainly. Kiñcit, anything. Karoti, do. Sa, he. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Purport. This freedom from the bondage of actions is possible only in Krishna consciousness. When one is doing everything for Krishna, a Krishna conscious person acts out of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he has no attraction for the results of the action. He is not even attached to his personal maintenance, for everything is left to Krishna, nor is he anxious to secure the things, nor to protect the things already in his possession. He does his duty to the best of his ability and leaves everything to Krishna. Such an unattached person is always free from the resultant reactions of good and bad. It is as though he were not doing anything. This is the sign of a karma or actions without fruitive reactions. Any other action, therefore devoid of Krishna consciousness, is binding upon the worker, and that is the real aspect of vikarma as explained herein before. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shivtapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsha Namom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindubhya Evacha. Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate. Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratise Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Shri Gopesha Gopika Kanta Shri Radha Kanta Namosute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shri Vishvabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Shri Hri Priya Shri Govinda Anandini Shri Govinda Mohini Shri Govinda Sarvasva Sarvakanta Shri Govinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Ram. Hare Krishna. My name is Asitaradhya and we are going through the portion of the chapter 4, central portion if you like. This is the heart of this chapter. So before we discuss the purport of this verse, I would like to actually give a brief synopsis of this chapter and what is happening in the verses until now. Krishna begins to speak about the transcendental knowledge. Because in the previous chapter, at the end of the third chapter, Krishna instructs Arjuna to strengthen the intelligence by deliberate spiritual intelligence, which is basically the transcendental knowledge. So, even in the second chapter, he laid down the foundation of a concept by way of a vyavasayatmika buddhi. Vyavasayatmika buddhi means intelligence which is fixed on transcendental knowledge. So Krishna is giving the history of how this transcendental knowledge descends in the first two verses. And says that he gave this yoga to Vivaswan and Vivaswan gave it to Manu and Manu gave it to Ikshvaku and blah, blah, blah. And that is how the Rajarshis, the saintly kings, understood the knowledge and received the knowledge as it is. And in the third verse, Krishna is setting a principle of who is qualified to receive this transcendental knowledge. What is an adhikara? See, the transcendental knowledge descended in the disciplic succession of Rajarshi kings. And he is telling Arjuna that you are qualified to receive this because you are my devotee and you are in relationship with me. So you are in a position to understand what I'm going to talk about. It is something mysterious. Prabhupada has translated the word yoga as a science of relationship with actually the Supreme. If you go to the transliterations, yoga in this chapter is identified as science of relationship with the Supreme. So this is actually mysterious. And this mystery, right, is very confidentially discussed with, spoken to, heard by, and understood by the devotees of the Lord. So bhakto asicha sakhajiti. Arjuna is already inside. Arjuna is a very elevated devotee. He's having a transcendental relationship in Sakhya Rasa with Lord Krishna. So what is our qualification to receive this knowledge? We are bhakto asi cha dasa iti. We are bhakto asi cha dasa iti. We are devotee in a relationship of servitorship with Krishna. We still don't know what is our transcendental form. We are not going to go into that. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has defined the constitutional position of every living entity, a very general definition of what soul is in its constitutional position. Is Jivera Swarupa Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. So because we are Bhakto Asicha Dasa iti, Rasyam Idam Uttamam, we are qualified to understand the mystery of this knowledge. And in the fourth verse, Arjuna challenges Krishna for the benefit of us. Arjuna challenges Krishna. He says, param janma, aparam bhavan janma, param janma vivasvitam. So Vivaswan, who is higher or senior by you than Vivaswan, who is already senior by you in birth, how am I to know that you gave this knowledge in the beginning, or to basically sun god Vivaswan? Prabhupada writes in the purport that Bhagavad Gita exists on this planet from the time of Ikshvaku, because Manu is not a resident of this planet. And Vivaswan is, the presiding deity of the sun planet. And Vivaswan initiates the dynasty of Kshatriyas. And Ikshvaku appears actually in that dynasty on the planet Earth. So you see, this dynasty is not confined to just one planet. It is coming from all the way from the sun planet, and on the Earth planet, the Ikshvaku is one of the descendants of Manu. So there you go. So then Prabhupada writes in the purport, and I was also, just calculating, and I found out that yes, 120 point, because this is a 28th yuga cycle of the Manu called Vaivasvata Manu, and each yuga cycle is 4.32 million years, and in this Divya Yuga, so this is a 28th Divya Yuga cycle, and Ramchandra appeared in Treta Yuga, so it exactly comes to something like 120 point certain millions of years. So Bhagavad Gita exists on this planet for more than 120 million years. Arjuna's question is very valid. These types of questions are raised by Arjuna because these are the questions that will arise in the minds of the people who do not understand the transcendental nature of Krishna. And Arjuna is giving Krishna an opportunity to clarify that, hey, my dear Lord, now speak about yourself. Clarify this doubt that how did you give this knowledge to Vivaswan so early back, centuries and millions of years back. Ikshvaku is 120.4 million years back. We don't know, sun god, Vivaswan. I think Prabhupada has not given any explanation about that. We can certainly trace that. But it's very interesting. I was calculating what is the time in Brahmaloka right now, and I found out that in Brahmaloka, Prabhupada writes that Brahma has already completed 50 years, and this is the first day of his 51st year. So it's like an appearance day of Brahma, if you like. And considering that there are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma, and there are 1,000 yuga cycles, right now, the time in Brahmaloka is 11 hours, 28 minutes, and some 45th second is going on. 11 hours and 28. It's not even basically, we actually can't say even Brahma, good afternoon. It's still good morning there. And just in this 1 second, Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu both have appeared. It's just amazing. So Arjuna is raising a valid question, and Krishna then in the following 4 verses, that is 4.5, 6, 7, and 8, he unlocks the transcendental mystery of his appearance. Now, for the first time in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking something confidential about himself. So far in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has not spoken anything at all about him. Now he's revealing himself. He's introducing himself. He is giving, basically, he is like, giving his identity, if you like the word. For example, if you have to take out, I was thinking, on this point that in the material world, when we have to take out any important document like a passport or Aadhaar card or PAN card or whatever it is, we need to give a present birth certificate, isn't it? And we need to tell them that, like, look, I was born, and so, this is a document that certifies my birth. So that's how basically our identity is first by the birth, and then they write, and then they ask us to actually fill out what is your occupation, what are your activities. So Krishna, actually, in the same way as we present ourselves, right, in the material world, Krishna is talking about his appearance to start with. He's introducing himself, who he is and how is he inside this world. So in the 4 verses, he gives the synopsis of how he appears in the world. why he appears in the world, and when he appears in the world. That is the verses 6, 7, and 8. And in actually the 5th verse, it says that Arjuna, you and me take so many births, but you can't remember any of those. You can't remember any of those. But I remember all of them. Why? Because I do not change my body. My body is not like you. Your body keeps on changing every time you take a birth. Every time you die, your body vanishes. Every time you take a birth, a new body is there for you. And this is generically applicable to all living entities. But me, I'm unborn to start with. So I appear. And because I am unborn and I don't change my body, I appear in the same transcendental form. So Krishna gives, this knowledge to establish that he is beyond 3 modes of material nature. His body is unchangeable, or say transcendental. To transcend, understand the meaning of this word. To transcend means to cross over. So there is a material and there is a spiritual, and transcendental means something which is not on this side, which is on that side. So it is transcendental to this side. So because Krishna is spiritual, we call Krishna is transcendental to modes. So he is transcendental to modes because he's already on that side. He's on the other side of the modes. So Krishna says, my body is not material. My nature is not material. And my potency, the internal potency by which I appear, is also not material. So everything about my birth, how I appear, is transcendental. Ajopi sannavyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi prakrutim swamadhisthaya sambhavami atma mayaya. And then in the verse number 7th and 8th, he says, when does he appear? Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. So he establishes, so he comes, abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujami aham. So that is the when aspect of his appearance. And why aspect is pavitranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskrutam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So in Krishna's appearance, or in appearance of any incarnation of Krishna, you find he's only doing these 3 activities. What are the 3 activities he does? Either he is performing the pastimes with his devotees, right? So there are transcendental pastimes of Krishna and his incarnations with his devotees, or he is annihilating the miscreants, or he is applying, re-establishing the principles of religion. These are the only things that basically Krishna does every time he appears. These are the 3 purposes that he serves. There is no 4th purpose. You analyze Krishna's activities. Analyze any lila of Krishna. It will fall into any of these 3 purposes. He's protecting his devotees. He's nurturing their devotion. And he is Ananda Ambuddhi Vardhanan. These transcendental leelas are going on. And killing the miscreants and the demons is a part of actually protecting the devotees, which is a primary purpose. And then he establishes the principles of religion as well, in every yuga. So his principal reason is yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bha. That is his principal reason. But when he comes over here, then he associates with the devotees, and he protects their devotion, and he annihilates the miscreants, and he establishes principles of religion. So that is Krishna's appearance. Then Krishna, comes up with a verse that after you understand my transcendental nature of the birth, he says something very unique in 4.9. I call this as a Janmashtami verse. Normally, in all of ISKCON temples, a typical Janmashtami class is based on this verse, or this verse is invariably quoted without fail. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vitti tattvata tyaktvā deham punarjanma naiti mameti so arjunaha. Anyone who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and my activities upon leaving the body does not have to take up the body again. He becomes liberated. Evam yo vetti tattvata. This is a condition Krishna puts. You need to understand this in truth. Tattvataha. And then in the in like the 10th verse, so people generally say, so if we read about Krishna's appearance and activities, then we don't have to take the then we actually don't have to take the birth again. No, it is not like that. You have to act upon this knowledge, which is immediately the next verse. So in the verse number 4.10, he says, with raga bhaya krodha, once you understand the transcendental nature of appearance, my appearance, you become devoid of attachment, fear, and anger. With raga bhaya krodha, manmaya mam upashrita, bahuo jnana tapasa puta matbhavam agata. So this is the result of understanding Krishna's transcendental appearance and activities. You become devoid of raga, bhaya, and krodha. And Prabhupada beautifully in the purport describes 3 types of people who never surrender to Krishna because they are under the influence of raga, that is a gross materialist, bhaya, impersonalist, and krodha, that is shunyavadis. So with raga, bhaya, krodha, those people are taken out. And he's talking because of knowing Krishna. This is what happens, that the raga, bhaya, and krodha goes away. So now you can become manmaya and you can take his shelter. And bahuvo jnana tapasa puja, jnana, tapasa, and puta. That is sambandha, abhideya, and prayojana. Jnana is sambandha jnana. Tapasa is the abhideya, means you have to undergo the process. It is not by knowing. Jnana, tapasa, puta. Puta is purification. Madhbhavam agata. You attain my transcendental nature. And then he lays down in the verse 4.11, he lays down a principle of reciprocation, if you like the word. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam sathaiva bhajamiham. Mama vartmanu vartante manushya patha sarvasha. Depending upon how you surrender, I just reciprocate. I just spoke about my pure devotees. Bahuo jnana tapasa puta. Many people in the past purified themselves by my transcendental knowledge, taking refuge in me. They become completely purified and they attain my transcendental nature. These are my devotees. But then there are Brahmavadis, and then there are, Paramatmavadis, or who take the process of Ashtanga Yoga. They don't exactly attain that, but because they follow an impersonalistic process, then they get the impersonalistic merging Sayujya Mukti. And similarly, Ashtanga Yogas, if they attain perfection in the process, then I reward them the mystical perfections. In short, what Krishna is telling is, whether you surrender to me directly or you surrender to me indirectly through other processes, whatever you attain in those processes is given by me only. So in a way, he's telling that why don't you come directly to the point of surrendering to me and take up the path of Krishna consciousness or devotional service. So that is principle of proportional. As you surrender, I reward. And everyone follows my path in all respects. So Arjuna, that is 4.11, right? Then, there are actually materialists who are like Vedavad Ratas and who are interested in attaining, the material, who are actually interested in attaining, the good birth, enjoyment of heavenly pleasures, and so many material desires. Instead of taking shelter of Krishna, they take shelter of the demigods. So that's fine. What is that verse? Kañcit karmaja yajante anya devata. Kshipram hi manusya loke siddhim bhavati karmaja. So there are demigod worshippers who take their shelter for fulfillment of various material desires, and soon they actually find that they've attained, those actually desires, which are rewarded by me on this. Prabhupada explains in the purport. So he has talked us. So in these 3 verses, right, verse 10, 11, and 12, he talks about all sorts of people who do not surrender, devotees, Brahmavadis, Ashtanga yogis, and then the demigod worshippers. And now Krishna, so this is surrendering based on knowing Krishna's appearance and activities in tattva. Now Krishna is coming up with a beautiful point, very important, the 2 verses. And I believe that this verse defines, the central portion of what he's trying to say in the 4th chapter. So he says, Chaturvarnyam maya srishtam guna karma vibhagasya. I am the creator of varnashrama system, but yet, although I am the creator, I am akartaram. I'm not bound by it. And then in the verse number 14, he puts down the principle, which is the principle, that we all need to imbibe and understand it thoroughly. I reckon this is a very pivotal verse if you want to understand the concept of akarma. And he says, Namam karmani limpanti name karma phalaspuha. Iti mam yobi janati karma virna nibadyate. He is giving us the reason. By his birth, in the section of, his birth, he's already proved he's a transcendental personality. He is transcendental, means he's on the other side of the modes. So, sorry about that. So Krishna is a creator of varnashrama system, which is nothing but a manual of, the activities, the do's and don'ts for the 4 varnas and 4 ashramas, according to the modes of material nature inflicted upon them. So how should one act under the mode of goodness? How should one act under the mode of, ignorance and patience? And the 4 types of varnas and 4 types of ashramas, and their prescribed duties are there. So Krishna has created this varnashrama dharma for actually the mankind, so that they can be gradually elevated to higher and higher status of life and ultimately come to the point of attaining transcendental knowledge and get liberated. But Krishna says that because he's transcendental, although he's seen when he comes to the material world, he's seen to be performing a lot of activities like, the normally human beings do under the varnashrama system. And because he has a human-like body, there is a tendency for people to judge that Krishna is just another human being performing the activities under varnashrama dharma. But now he's just putting down this fundamental rule that, look, guys, I established varnashrama, I'm beyond the modes, so no activities of varna and ashrama ever bind me at all. Namam karmani limpanti. I have nothing to attain by performing these activities, and I'm completely self-satisfied. I'm not entangled by the fruits of these activities. Name karma phalāsaṅgaṁ. This is the most fundamental principle to understand how we should act in a way that will not give us the reactions of the world. He says, Yomam iti yomam abhijanati karma vedna nibadyate. So this is a principle, of transcendental consciousness. So how is basically Krishna is transcendental, is situated, so no material activity can ever affect him, and he's not entangled by the fruits of the activities anyway, because modes can't touch him. He's transcendental to the modes. But what about us? We are operating under the influence of 3 modes of material nature. Our body is made of modes of material nature. We are not completely purified yet. So for the souls like us, the conditioned sadhakas like us who are not yet liberated, Krishna is giving us a principle that you should perform the activity in this consciousness that I am performing my activities. Now, Krishna is not asking us to renounce the activities. You have to perform the activities, but your consciousness has to be at a different level. And that is what is the crux of this chapter. And that is what is, that is what is something, that Krishna is now laying the focus upon. Constitutionally, Prabhupada writes in the purports at many places throughout the chapter, we are part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Jivera swarupa hoi Krishnera nitya-dasa. There cannot be, for a jiva, there cannot be a consciousness higher than this. This is the highest consciousness as a conditioned soul we can develop. Because this is the constitutional consciousness in the constitutional position of we being the part and parcel of Krishna, means we are the servant of Krishna. So in this consciousness, if any activity is performed, then that activity will not entangle. And that is a point, and that is basically the conclusion of, that is a conclusion of disciplic succession. There are 4 disciplic successions, and we know that, the acharyas have presented the tattva of disciplic conclusion by various theories. Like it started with Advaita, then it went into Visishta Advaitam, then it went into Dvaita Advaita and Dvaita Dvaita, and finally Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reconciled that as Achinta Veda Veda. The whole tattva, the whole conclusion, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is presented in this one sentence: Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nitya Das. Krishna is a supreme personality of Godhead. Jiva is a part and parcel, and there is an eternal loving relationship between a Jiva and Ishvara in the spiritual world. This is the highest consciousness you can develop, right? This is your constitutional position. You can't go beyond this. You can't go beyond this. It's not possible. So if you perform any activities, now this is a completely transcendental spiritual consciousness, because you're talking about 3 aspects in this consciousness. You're talking about the Jiva, you're talking about Ishvara and devotional service. All 3 of them are transcendental. So it means if you are thinking at all points of time that I'm an eternal servant of Krishna, in a relationship with Krishna, and in that consciousness, spiritual consciousness, transcendental consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, that is Krishna consciousness. If you perform any activity, Krishna says, that is a principle if you adopt, na karma virna nibhadyate, you're not going to be entangled. Having laid down this principle, the next 3 verses, 15, 16, and 17, is that 15, 16, 17? Or yeah, 15, 16, and 17. Let me see here, 16, 17, and 18. No, the verse actually 15. Krishna says that iti mam yobi janati karma-bhir nasa badhyate. So that is the verse number 14. So many times devotees read this and say, oh, I don't have to do anything. Krishna says, if you just know this, then there is no reactions of work. No, it is not like that. You read the very next verse. Evam gyatva, by knowing this, krutam karma purvairpi mokshubihi. Kuru karmairva tasmatvam purvai purvataram krutam. Sorry. Evam gyatva krutam karma. By knowing this, knowing is not enough. Krutam karma, you have to act. And you have to act on the footsteps of how the members of disciplic succession in the past acted based on my transcendental knowledge, and they attained the liberation. So I am asking you to follow in their footsteps. You got to act. That's what he's saying. Kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvai purvataram krutam. Just as they perform the activities, you perform the activities. You do it. How to perform the activity? That's $1 million question. And now Krishna is going to actually resolve something, which entangles this principle of karma. Krishna says, Kavyo api yatra mohita, even the intelligent person cannot decipher. They cannot draw the line of demarcation. Where is vikarma, where is akarma, and where is karma? So he identifies that you have to perform an activity. In the normal course, if you do an activity, you will become entangled. So I've given you the principle in the verse number 14. Namam karmani dimpanti name karma phalispuha. So you borrow this principle and you try to situate your consciousness in your eternal position that I am a servant of Krishna, right? Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishna Nitya Das. Prabhupada writes so many places. This is the consciousness in which we got to work. And then there'll be no reactions of the work for us. So that is inaction in action. The normal activities is action in action. There is inaction in action. And there is an action in inaction. Action in inaction. So Krishna says, it's quite difficult, to decipher and to draw the line, where the action in action, where action in inaction, and where inaction in action ends. So what I've done is that to resolve this, I've drawn something called a karma matrix, which I'll present to you. Right, Lavanglata Mata, you can allow me to, share the screen.
Yes, it's been allowed.
Okay, so I will actually share that karma matrix, and after sharing karma matrix, we will then, after sharing that karma matrix, we will see that what are the verses that I'm talking about today, 4.19 and 4.20, what are they trying to actually tell us? So let's look at the karma matrix. So what are the 16, 17, and 18? Kim karma, kim karmeti, kavyopi atra mohita, tatte karma pravikshami, yat gyatva mokshasya ashubha. I'm now going to tell you, Arjuna, right, what is karma and what is akarma. But hang on a minute. You should also know the vikarma. So in 17th verse, he says, karmano hi api bodhavyam cha vikarmanah, akarmanasya bodhavyam gahana karmano gati. This is very deep. Karma, vikarma, and now he has introduced vikarma as well. And now he says that knowing this is not enough. You got to understand, because you want to perform the activity without the reactions, not an activity with the reactions. So he says, karmani akarma ya pashyet. In karma, one who sees inaction, one who sees inaction. And then he says, akarmani cha karmaya. Means in inaction, one who sees an action, he is an intelligent among men. Sa buddhiman manushyesu sa yuktaha krutastha karma. He may be performing all sorts of activities, but he's not going to get anything done. So I think instead of going through these verses, so these three verses, right, is nothing but a karma matrix, in my opinion. So I'm going to present that to you. I think we'll simplify a little bit. Let's see what karma matrix is. Oh, that's a karma matrix. Okay. So there are two aspects, the activity and consciousness, and what is that called, and what is the result, for that particular activity. So if you perform a material activity in a material consciousness, it is either vikarma or karma. Vikarma means material activities which is prohibited by Vedas, which is performed in material consciousness. It is called vikarma, and it leads to lower spaces of life and lower planets. That is the result you get. Then there is material activities which are prescribed by the Vedas and performed in material consciousness. That is karma. You are elevated to higher spaces of life or higher planets, or you may remain, as a human being, but you will have a higher birth, like a Shudra and, the Vaishya can be elevated to Kshatriya and Brahmana. Kshatriya and Brahmana, Kshatriyas can go to the heavenly planets, Brahmanas can become the rishis or sages. So there is either a higher spaces or the higher varnas or the higher planets. If you follow the injunctions of Veda and perform, so this is basically varnashrama dharma. Here, material activity or material duties prescribed by the Vedas, which is nothing but your prescribed duty according to varna and ashrama in material consciousness, it elevates you to the higher space in higher planets. We know that 100 lifetimes of perfectly executed varnashrama dharma means you can become Lord Brahma. Now we come to, if you perform spiritual activity, by spiritual activity I would say anything to do with 64 angas of bhakti, for example, that Rupa Goswami identifies in nectar of devotion. Spiritual activity, like attending a kirtan, but you are not a devotee, your consciousness is material. It is called agyat sukruti or bhakti unmukhi sukruti. So we have got material activities in material consciousness. Now we have got spiritual activity in material consciousness. That is agyat sukruti. And that agyat sukruti at some stage will put you into the association of the devotees. That is basically the result of agyat sukruti. That's what invariably happens. You will come in contact with a devotee and you will buy the book from him, or you will be invited to take the prasadam, or you will be invited to attend some satsang program where you will hear about Krishna. You will be invited to some temple program, Janmashtami, and you will have a darshan of the Lord, and you will be creating a lot of sukritis, and you are gradually purifying. Your faith is building up. You will begin to like the association of the devotees, and you are now making the progress. So we saw material activities in material consciousness, which can be vikarma or karma, spiritual activity, but in material consciousness is your agyat sukruti. And we'll see some examples of agyat sukruti. Material activity in spiritual consciousness, and this is what is the crux of this chapter, and that is what Krishna is trying to get you. Krishna says you got no option right now, my dear friend. You are conditioned by three modes. You are compelled by the three modes to act in a particular way. What you can do, what you can do, you must perform the activity, but perform in the spiritual activities. And I'm giving you the principle. Namam karmaṇy limpanti name karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ. That I can say, but you can't say at this stage. So at least come to the platform of accepting your constitutional position. So you put yourself, you actually develop this consciousness that you are the servant of Krishna. And this is the summum bonum. This is, the essence of, as I explained, this is a disciplic conclusion. So only by associating with the devotees, I will put that before that, spiritual activities. And so, because of a pious activities, you will come to the stage of performing some agyat sukruti. It will lead you to associate with the devotees. In the association of devotees, you will get this transcendental knowledge, and your consciousness will be spiritualized, Krishnized. And in that activity, and in that consciousness, when you perform the activities, it is called akarma. This akarma leads you to the liberation from three modes of material nature. That is what it will do. And we'll see in the verse number 4.19, 20, 21, 22, 23. These are the verses that shows the path of liberation through akarma, right? And then finally, spiritual activities and spiritual consciousness, that is bhakti, that gives you prema, that we all know. So this is a karma matrix, and this is what Krishna is trying to address. Karmano hi api bodhavyam cha vikarmana akarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gati. So we have dissected this into the two sections of activity and the consciousness. And what is the result if you get? Again, activities prohibited by Vedas. Absolutely don't do this. The four prohibitions: no meditating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, blah blah blah, and so many other activities prohibited by Vedas. It is vikarma, lower spaces, lower planets. Varnashrama prescribed duties. Material consciousness, karma can elevate you to higher planets, higher species, higher birth, blah blah blah. Spiritual activities in material consciousness, agyat sukruti. Material activity in spiritual consciousness is akarma, and spiritual activity finally in spiritual consciousness, that is Krishna consciousness, is bhakti, which is giving you prema. So this is a karma matrix. And I've designed this table that actually shows you the order of progression as well. Krishna says in 8th chapter, I can't basically quote that first number, but Tesham antagatam papam jananam punya karmaṇaṁ. One whose sinful reactions are exalted means one who is not suffering the results of any vikarma, and his jananam punya karmaṇaṁ means who has no sinful reactions to suffer and who is completely pious soul. He comes in association with the devotees somehow, and he becomes dvandva moha nirmukta. So this dvandva moha nirmukta means what? Dvandva moha nirmukta is liberation. Liberation from three modes of material nature, from the dualities posed by the three modes. That is Dvandva Moha Nirmukta. So that portion, that Dvandva Moha Nirmukta is liberation, that is akarma portion. And so after the liberation, Bhaktya, after the liberation, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na sochati na kaṅcati samat sarveshu bhuteshu madabhaktim labate param. Parabhakti, the pure devotional service will start after the stage of liberation, which is spiritual activity in spiritual consciousness, which is bhakti, which gives you prema. So this is a karma matrix. Material activities in material consciousness, vikarma or karma. Spiritual activity in material consciousness, adyat sukruti. Material activity in spiritual consciousness, akarma, and spiritual in spiritual is bhakti. So this is how, I would like to deal with the verses 16, 17, 18. And now we come to the verses on hand, which is verse number 19 and 20. Now what Krishna is trying to do over here, I'll show you. I've got another. From 4.19 to 4.24, this is the progression of the consciousness of how one achieves liberation by following the principle of akarma. What is the principle of akarma? The principle of akarma is that any activity you do, I don't care. If it is dovetailed with Krishna in a spiritual consciousness, in the position of a servant of a Krishna, I'm the only knowledge you need to grasp, and imbibe with total faith is that I am eternally a part and parcel of Krishna, and I have a relationship with him in the spiritual world. So I'm now going to perform the activities for the pleasure of the Krishna. Both the activities and the fruits of the activities belong to Krishna, not mine. That is a spiritual consciousness. And when one begins to act on the basis of that principle, that consciousness, then how his consciousness is transformed, it is a subject matter of verse number 4.19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. In 4.19, it begins with kāma-saṅkalpa-varjitāḥ. That is a word over here, means no material, devoid of desire for sense gratification. Then 4.20 is nitya-tṛpto nirāśrayaḥ. Nitya-tṛpto nirāśrayaḥ means he becomes ever satiated, he's satisfied, because kāma-saṅkalpa-varjitāḥ will lead to tyaktvā karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ. Tyaktvā karma-phalāsaṅgaṁ means he's completely abandoning the attachment to the fruits of the activity. That is happening in verse number 4.20. And as a result, he's quite satisfied. He is not dependent upon the fruits of the activities at all. So nitya-tṛpto nirāśrayaḥ is completely independent. He's completely independent means he's fully dependent upon Krishna. That is the meaning of completely independent, as Prabhupada is translating over here. Then in 4.21, his consciousness further advances. Now his mind and his intelligence are coming in control. Nirāśrayaḥ means his mind and actually intelligence is in complete control, and he attains the stage of sarve tyaktvā parigraha. Means all conceptions, he has got nothing to do with any of the material conceptions anymore. See, and in 4.22, he becomes dvandva tito vimatsara. Vimatsara means devoid of envy and devoid of any duality. See, this is how he's progressing. And in 4.23, gata sangasya muktasya, he becomes completely liberated from the modes. This is a karma. This is a central portion of chapter 4. This is the purpose of transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge is not to basically cram the slokas of Bhagavad Gita like a parrot. It is for applying, Krishna says. It's a practical process. Based on this consciousness, the devotees in the past, right, took my shelter. They worked in this way and they attained the liberation. Arjun, I want you to do the same thing. Remember the 15th verse? That's what he's saying. Not 15th verse. Or, yeah, 15th verse. That's what he's saying. Yeah. So, gata sangasya muktasya, and then this is completely spiritual. Brahmaiva tena gantavya. He attains to the spiritual world. He attains the spiritual world just by performing a karma. So by a karma is liberation. So the liberation takes place in 4.23, and 4.24 is like a pure devotional service. The whole activity, whatever is offering, whatever the result is get is completely spiritual. He's now operating on a transcendental platform completely. So this is the power of a karma. And that is what is the purport of this verse. So now what actually we will do, I'll put the light on, and we will do some activities. classify the activities as vikarma, aparadha, karma, akarma, and bhakti. Right? Lavanglata Mata, you can unmute everybody. Haribol,
Everyone can unmute themselves.
Okay, everyone can unmute themselves. Now you guys think we are actually going to classify these activities. Devotees watching the football final on TV. What is that?
Vikarma.
Sorry, who said vikarma?
I said vikarma.
Okay, vikarma. I would say that is aparadha. Sorry about that. I actually put down, classify the activities as vikarma, aparadha, karma, akarma, and bhakti. For devotees, actually, there is no vikarma, right? It is an aparadha, but you're right, it is a vikarma. It's not something sanctioned activity. Right there. Technically, more correct term would be aparadha. School children taking part in kirtan at temple. What do you think it is?
Bhakti. Oh, no.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's correct.
Sorry.
You said Adhyat Sukriti, you are absolutely right. Devotees collecting bhoga for building water fountains on Parikrama Marg. Bhoga? No, devotees collecting donations. I'm sorry. I should change that. Right? Devotees collecting donations.
Bhakti.
Akarma. Akarma.
That's akarma. Absolutely right. That's akarma. Right? It's a normal material activity, but performed in the spiritual consciousness. Yes, to help the devotees. Akarma. First initiate attending Bhakti Shastri course. What is this?
Bhakti.
Perfect. That is bhakti. Receiving initiation from spiritual master.
Bhakti.
Bhakti. Yes, correct. Bhakti, because it is one of the 64 angas of bhakti. You know, the spiritual activity or activity of bhakti means 64 angas of bhakti. It's made it very simple. There is no anything outside the 64 angas is not bhakti. Okay, Jñānāgni-Dagdha Prabhu driving taxi in San Francisco made the expenses of temple. The famous example. What is this?
Bhakti.
Bhakti.
Akarma.
Akarma. Driving taxi is not a spiritual activity. It's a material activity. What's he doing? He's naman karmaṇy limpanti. It's got nothing to do with that. Whatever process is there, he gives it to San Francisco Jagannath temple. Right. So that's akarma. Very well done. Devotees collecting donations for Janmashtami.
Bhakti.
Devotees collecting donations for Janmashtami. Yes, it is bhakti. It is there a part of 64 angas of bhakti. You can also say akarma for those who are not clear with 64 angas of bhakti according to nectar of devotion. It would not be a wrong answer too. That's fine. Industrialist building a hospital.
Karma.
Industrialist building a hospital. Yes, it's karma. Very good. Sorry?
Sakama karma, that is like pious activity, right?
Yeah. Sakam karma. Yeah, it's a karma, whether sakam or niskam. By the way, in the whole Bhagavad Gita, there is no word like nishkam karma. Do you know that? Read Bhagavad Gita. There is no word like nishkam karma. And we quote the yoga leader and this sakam karma and nishkam karma and left, right, and center. Krishna has not even used this in any of the slokas in Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada has not used this in any of the purpose. Okay, that's fine. Donation for Vedic planetarium by Bill Gates.
Ajnata Sukriti.
Yes, Adhyat Sukriti, perfect. Spiritual activity in zero consciousness. Devotee accountant preparing tax returns for the temple at no cost.
Akarma.
Akarma, beautiful. Spiritual activities. Material activity in spiritual consciousness. Sponsoring travel dress for Radharani by landlord of the temple premises.
It depends if he's a devotee or not.
Yeah.
Adyat Sukriti.
Ajnata
Adyat Sukriti.
Adhyat Sukriti. Landlord of the temple premises is not a devotee. Assume that. If it's a devotee, then
He's a
Then
devotee.
Bhakti Akarma. Akarma.
Bhakti.
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 It will be
yeah.
bhakti. It's a deity worship.
Yes.
It's a deity worship. It falls into deity worship category. Is this lunch at Govinda's for company staff?
Karma.
Agyat Sukriti.
Agyat Sukriti. Yeah.
Agyat Sukriti. And Ekadasi fast by non-devotee family members.
Agyat Sukriti.
Yeah, correct. Okay, so this is something, I prepared a table. Sorry, you said anything? Okay, so this table I built so that, we can test the principle which we laid down inside the karma matrix. I think with that, I would like to come to the conclusion of the class. It is already 6:32. If anybody has got any comments or questions or point to be made, then
Krishna.
yes.
Prabhuji, the table that you showed, the last fourth point, where a devotee is maintaining the accounts for the temple at no cost.
Yes.
At no cost.
Because it is at no cost. It actually,
He's
it
not
is
charging.
Suppose if a devotee is preparing the text returns and charging the money to the temple, it's just like any other karmic activity. But because at no cost, it is a karma.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. That's clear. Thank you.
Excellent. So any question you have? Any comments you want to make?
I have a question, Prabhu, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So we know that. Sorry. Are you able to hear me, right?
Yes. No, actually, I'm not able to see you, but I know you are Kasturi Mata, correct?
Yeah. 1 second.
Okay,
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you? Okay. I have a question. So the question is, does really Krishna see all these karma faculties? Because his mercy is costless, right? We always talk about it doesn't have a cause. It is beyond the causeless mercy. That's why he comes in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So is really Krishna going to take into account that, you're doing karma, you're this, you're that? Because I understand that this is basically like how you're functioning in the material world. But does really Krishna take anything very personally of this?
Okay, first of all, I would like to say Krishna's mercy is causeless. Just take it out of the mind. This causeless mercy has created, a lot of confusion amongst the devotees. We see that, the principle of Krishna's mercy is that the mercy follows the endeavor. It is never causeless. In order to bind Krishna just by the simple ropes, a simple activity, Mother Yashoda had to work so hard. Right? We are performing a sadhana bhakti, and we have to do this bhakti with intensity, before we actually attain the sadhya of a bhakti, which is bhava. Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udarati tivrena bhakti yogena yajetam purushantam param. So there is a lot of emphasis on the abhipravṛtto, that bhakti, the process of bhakti has to be performed meticulously, sincerely, to the best of your ability, without committing offenses. And then only basically this mercy is going to follow, and not otherwise. What is the other example? What I wanted to give, it was just in my mind. So the mercy of Krishna actually follows the endeavor of the devotee. And even basically Krishna says, Tesham eva anukampartham aham agyana jantama nashyami atma bhavastu jnana dipena bhasvata. When tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. When the devotee is engaged, who has become completely his machita mata gata prana, that devotee who is worshipping with a lot of love and devotion, I show my special mercy to him by wiping out the anathas from the heart. It's not causeless. There are souls Krishna is at the end of the day completely independent personality, and he chooses to bestow his mercy upon certain souls. Like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered a dog who was a part of Sankirtan party. Yes, that's a causeless mercy, but those are very exceptions. We have to actually get focused about our activities. Attentive chanting, following 4 regulative principles, hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam, following the instructions of Guru Maharaj. Yeah, try to perform as many angas of bhakti as possible, and then basically mercy will manifest over the period of time, right? It takes long time for the perfection to be attained. So that's the first part which I would like to answer, that, the causeless mercy is very exception. When Krishna was passing through a jangala forest, that is an example given in Nectar of Devotion. And when those Adivasis, the Adivasis saw Krishna's beauty, they were charmed by Krishna's beauty. And they surrendered to him in their mind. And they attained the bhava. They attained the perfection just that, the moment. That's the causeless mercy of Krishna, that he was present at that point of time and he gave his darshan, and there is no reason why those Adivasis got liberated. But that's an example given by Rupa Goswami. But that's very, very rare. I gave you the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivering a dog. And there was something else in my mind which I just forgot. But yeah, mercy of Krishna follows the endeavor. That is a principle we learn from Damodar Leela. So that was your first part. What is the second part? You mentioned something about material world. What is it that you wanted to ask? You asked something about material world.
Yeah, like all this karma or vikarma or everything, that is basically a system that's in the material world. But I was thinking that Krishna is beyond the causeless mercy. I mean, beyond this limitations.
Yes.
Yeah, but you answered me. Thank you.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prabhu.
Okay, so Guru Gaurav his hand up.
Yes, Guru Gaurav Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu ji. Hare Krishna.
Dandavat pranam. Bataiye.
Dandavat pranam. Thank you very much for such an excellent class. It was very, very informative, and almost you have summarized this chapter 4.
Okay.
And this matrix was very, very useful, whatever you have given. Just I wanted to, yesterday I was, you had explained about this Dhruv Maharaj you were telling. If you see in the matrix, so it goes some material activity in spiritual consciousness and akarma getting liberated and Dhrulok and darshan of God. It is correct?
Correct. See, Dhruv Maharaj's example is very unique. Yesterday I explained, Dhruv Maharaj acted according to Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. How will you not get the darshan of the Lord if you don't act according to these 3 entities? Who is the Guru? The Guru is Narad Muni, who is empowering him with Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva, right? And he is giving him the instructions. To attain the Supreme Lord is not easy. Dhruva, go away from the forest. He says, no, I want to. No, you'll have to perform bhakti with a lot of intensity. I am willing to go to any depth to get the darshan. That is Dhruva. That is the determination, right? So he applied himself to the task, Tivrena Bhakti Yogena. So he followed the Guru, he followed the Shastra. Because Srimad Bhagavatam says that bhakti is not limited only to the devotees. In the beginning, everybody is Sakama Bhakta. We are all conditioned soul by default is a Sakama, right? Or, Kama-kami, if not Sakama. So, Akama sarva kamova moksha kama udarati. Tivrena bhakti yogena yajetam purusham param. So he followed perfectly this instruction of Srimad Bhagavatam that, even a sarva kama devotee, right? Means who has all desires, and Dhruv Maharaj's desires was not extraordinarily materialistic. He was asking something which is materially impossible. Like Hiranyakashipu is saying, give me immortality. I want to go beyond death. I should never die. It's impossible. In the same way, Dhruv Maharaj wanted to ask, I want to get kingdom higher than Brahma. It's not possible. Because Brahma is a ruler of material universe, and within the material universe, how can you have a kingdom bigger than material universe?
Right.
So, so this is an example of an extreme Sakama devotee who is performing extreme, devotional service with extreme intensity. He made the breathing of demigods impossible just by taking one breath inside in the 6th month of his austerity, according to Bhagavatam, which compelled the demigods to go to Brahma and to Vishnu, and Vishnu appeared, and all the things happened. So, even the Sakama devotees, so he was following, the Guru, which is Narad Muni, Shastra, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Sadhu in the form of his mother. His mother is the Vatma Pradarshaka Guru who told Dhruv, that's all right, you want to actually do that. Just go to the forest, sit down, and just meditate upon Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the mother telling. Vatma Pradarshaka Guru. So she has taken the position of a sadhu. Narad Muni is Diksha Guru, official Diksha Guru. He initiated him into mantra. So Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, right? And he performed that with intensity. He became complete. He was absorbed. At that point of time, it was not bothering that he wants to become bigger than Brahma. He was completely absorbed in meditating upon the Supreme Lord. So his desire is one thing. He never acted upon that desire within his heart. He was always absorbed in the transcendental meditation. And so he attained the darshan of the Lord. So what do you want? So I want this. Okay, there you go. And there are examples of demons pleasing Krishna in the past too. So we can understand Dhruva is a devotee. He is authorized and empowered by Narad Muni. And one who is favored by the devotee, pure devotee of the Lord of a stature of Narad Muni, Krishna is bound to basically give him the darshan. So there are many angles to look at that.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking a nice question. Anybody else? Okay, Lavang Lata Mataji, thank you for an opportunity. And
Thank you, Prabhu.
Vancha kalpatarubhyascha krupa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Srimad Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.
Jai.